Ever since Ben Roethlisberger has retired, the Steelers have had a dismal quarterback play. And coming into this season, Steelers fans were hopeful that Russell Wilson was finally going to be the answer to the Steelers' longtime woes post Big Ben at quarterback. And at one point, he looked like that answer. But over the last month, when the Steelers have played against the toughest opponents on their schedule, the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bengals, they've lost all four of those games, and they're on a four-game losing streak going into the playoffs. And it looks like they're going to be nothing more but, once again, a one-and-done playoff team. And Mike Tomlin's very long playoff drought is going to continue for at least another year because Russell Wilson can't cook anymore. He's not good. And during this Bengals loss, going into halftime, Russell Wilson was like 5 of 12 for 45 passing yards. You know, Russell Wilson, he got the Steelers to this point, but he isn't any better than what the Steelers have gotten out of the quarterback position since the retirement of Big Ben. He's nothing more but a more mobile version of Kenny Pickett. And the mobility isn't really that big. And the Steelers enter the postseason on the four-game losing streak, on the brink of being an easy one-and-done playoff exit, and Mike Tomlin's very long playoff drought continuing because of how ineffective Russell Wilson has been as the Steelers quarterback. He throws a really good deep ball. He has a little bit of mobility, and he's a veteran. That's about it. If anything, Russell Wilson has severely limited the Steelers' offense. Arthur Smith isn't the problem. His play calling has been pretty good considering the limited quarterback that he's had to work with. Russell Wilson is having the same issues in Pittsburgh that caused him to get benched and cut for a record dead cap hit by the Denver Broncos. He can't see in the middle of the field. He doesn't have the mobility outside the pocket to really buy time for guys to get open. All Russell Wilson is go balls and deep passes down the field. And if you can take that away, he's nothing more but a 2-3 yard check down merchant. He is no better than what Kenny Pickett was as the starting quarterback in Pittsburgh. And I feel bad for Mike Tomlin because he gets a lot of criticism. It definitely is deserved, but the main reason why Mike Tomlin is coming up short is because he's in the division with two of the best quarterbacks in the game, in Lamar and Joe Burrow. And it's hard to win in this league when you have quarterback play that is a significant downgrade from what the two top teams in your division have. And until Mike Tomlin can finally get a long-term solution to this lingering quarterback issue in Pittsburgh, he's going to continue to come up short. You know, he can get the Steelers to 9-8, 10-7 consistently. Maybe they overachieve and get the 11, 12 wins occasionally. But the same thing is going to transpire come playoff time. You're not going to get far because no matter what, you're still going to need elite quarterback play to win. And it's a quarterback-driven league for a reason. And most of the NFL's best quarterbacks reside in the AFC. And what the Steelers keep doing is they keep getting these quarterbacks who they believe are good enough. Russell Wilson was supposed to be good enough. And all off season, I was really skeptical about Russell Wilson. I was his biggest critic, and you probably could have called me his biggest hater. And I came around on him after the win against the Washington Commanders. I thought that if he was able to sustain that level of play come playoff time, the Steelers would be able to make a deep playoff run. But now, with how this offense has just fallen apart, if you can't get the run game going and you can't throw those moon balls to George Pickens, then he's just a low-end quarterback. And the Steelers now have to find ways to win in spite of Russell Wilson, because you see how the ending of the Bengals game went. For him to be a veteran quarterback, he looked like a rookie out there. You expect him to throw the ball out of bounds, not get tackled inbounds with one timeout left, time ticking by the second, and yet he just thinks it's a smart idea to just get hit. And Mike Tomlin, he took too long to burn the timeout. When you see your quarterback makes an awful low IQ football decision like that, you got no choice but to burn the timeout, even if you don't want to, because you still have to set up time for Chris Boswell to kick the potential game-winning field goal. And as easy as it is to harp on Mike Tomlin, you can't blame him for the quarterback situation that the Steelers are in, partially because he's such a good coach. The Steelers are never in contention to draft any game-changing or franchise-changing quarterback in the draft. So you're regulated to what you believe is the best you can get in free agency. And I felt like Russell Wilson, for how he has played, has been pretty good value. He's only getting paid $1 million. But if the Steelers were to re-sign or extend Russell Wilson for 3 years, $30 million, I probably might consider not being a fan of this team anymore, because it shows that they're not serious about trying to compete for Super Bowls. You see, Mike Tomlin always likes to say, the standard is the standard, right? But the standard is no longer the standard that it used to be. The Steelers used to be a first-class organization in the NFL that was always being talked about for winning it all. They were always in the Super Bowl conversation. And ever since 2010, that loss to the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl, the Steelers have done nothing but allow their standard to drop year after year. This went from being a playoff team where you expected them to make it to the playoffs, not celebrate it because it was expected for them to get to the postseason, and you expected for them to win playoff games and at least make it to the AFC Championship. But now we go from being a Super Bowl contender, that being an expectation, to the expectation being making it to an AFC Championship, to now the expectation is we should be satisfied with 10-7 seasons, Mike Tomlin being able to pull out a winning record, and nothing more than that. And I say that's just BS. It sucks being a Steelers fan right now because it's the same old year after year. Trash quarterback play. Mike Tomlin finds a way to overcome it with a stacked defense. Cam Hayward having a career resurgence. TJ Watt having once again another Defensive Player of the Year caliber season. And yet you have nothing to show for it because this defense carries this team so much to the point where sometimes they can't get a break. And Russell Wilson, he had a little stretch when he was solid, not great. But now we see with how ugly the month of December has gone and, the last week of the season, losing to the Bengals, that he just isn't the answer. And there's no reason to bring him back on another deal. If anything, if he wants to run it back on another cheap $1 million 1-year deal, I have no problem with that. But bringing him back for a longer deal than that is just pure insanity because he's not only going to get worse, but the Steelers are also going to get to a point where they might end up having to part ways with Mike Tomlin just because he's just so fixated off this mindset that he can win with anybody at quarterback. No matter how good of a coach you may be, you still need competent quarterback play. And Russell Wilson has been anything but a competent quarterback these last 4 games for the Steelers. He needs to go because Steeler fans were duped out into thinking that this guy still has some juice left in the tank when, in all actuality, they were fooled because he has nothing left. Russ can't cook anymore. He doesn't need to be allowed to cook anymore because all he's cooking up is more disappointment for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would be really upset if they end up bringing this dude back for another year in Pittsburgh because I don't want to see any more of Russell Wilson and the black and gold. It just disgusts me how the Steelers have to go up against Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, and they keep throwing these bum-ass quarterbacks on the field. Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson. The Steelers are one of the most recognizable brands in the NFL. They're one of the most popular franchises in all of sports, and yet they can't get a top-notch quarterback for a reasonable price. You mean to tell me that you couldn't have gotten a Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold for a franchise that has the reputation that it has? They have done a poor job post Big Ben finding a way to replace one of the greatest players that ever laced up the cleats for this organization. And at this point, they just keep falling in the same rinse, wash, and repeat cycle with these quarterbacks being the main reason why.